I was about to walk through the big doors of the funeral home when I felt a strong hand press against my shoulder. It was Michael, my stepson. His voice was low, but sharp enough to cut me down. "You don't belong here," he said coldly. His words hit me harder than the pressure of his hand. I looked into his eyes that looked so much like his father's. Same color, same shape. But there was none of the warmth, none of the kindness that had filled his father. "Daniel." "Michael, please," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just want to say goodbye." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "You've had 8 years to say whatever you needed to say. The service is for real family. People who were part of his whole life, not just the last chapter." Behind him stood his younger brother, Chris, and his sister, Emily. Both of them watched, uneasy, but of course neither stepped in. They never did whenever Michael decided to take the lead and push me out. I swallowed hard, keeping my dignity, just like Daniel always respected about me. "Where do you want me to sit then?" I asked softly. Michael lifted his chin. "Back row. If there's no space, you can stand. Standing won't kill you." I gave a small nod, straightened my black dress, the same one Daniel had helped me pick out just 6 months ago for a charity gala, when we thought he still had years left. Not weak sand, walked past my stepchildren with my head held high. The back row was full, but thankfully, Margaret, an older woman who had worked as Daniel's assistant for years, moved over to make space for me. She leaned close as I sat down. "This isn't right," she whispered. "Mr. Bennett would be furious." "Thank you, Margaret," I said softly. "But today isn't about me." From the back row, I watched Daniel's 3 children accept handshakes, hugs, and words of comfort with the same polished manners their father once had. And in the very front row, there was Sylvia, their mother, Daniel's ex-wife. She held a handkerchief and dabbed at her dry eyes, playing the part of the grieving widow, even though she hadn't been his wife for 15 years. Meanwhile, the real widow that was me was shoved all the way to the back, hidden, as if my years with Daniel never happened. The service itself was beautiful, and I knew Daniel would have appreciated the grace and elegance of it. But when his children spoke about him, they painted a version of Daniel that felt like a stranger to me. They praised his sharp business sense, his wealth, his empire. But there was no mention of his quiet kindness, the mornings he loved to sit with coffee and a crossword puzzle, the way he gave to charity without asking for recognition. Those were the things that made him Daniel to me. When the service ended, people started to file out. I stayed in my seat, waiting until the chapel was nearly empty. I wanted just one moment at the casket, one private moment to leave the small sprig of lavender. I had tucked inside my purse Daniel's favorite scent, but before I could get close, Michael appeared again. "The car's waiting to take him to the cemetery," he said firmly. "Family only for the burial. I'm sure you understand." I looked at him quietly for a moment. I understood far more than he realized. I knew grief could twist people into cruel versions of themselves. I knew his children were desperate to control what little they had left of their father. And I knew Daniel had expected all of this. We had talked about it, prepared for it, in those last quiet nights when it was just the 2 of us. "Of course," I said simply. "Goodbye, Michael." I walked out alone, carrying my lavender sprig in my purse. I never got to place it on his casket. I never got to say goodbye in the way I wanted. Just like so many moments in our marriage, my place beside Daniel was erased by his children, as if our love had never existed. A week later, the text message I had been waiting for arrived. It was from Mr. Stein, Daniel's longtime lawyer and friend. "The reading of the will is scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. at my office. Daniel was clear that you must be present." I stared at the message for a long time before replying with a simple, "Thank you." That night, I went over the notes Daniel and I had made together before he passed. We had spent hours planning for this exact moment. He had known his children would try to push me out. He had known their greed, their resentment, and their sense of entitlement. Still, knowing didn't make it easier. My chest felt heavy, my heart weighed down by grief and by the storm that I knew was coming. The next day, I put on a navy blue suit. It wasn't the attire of a mourning widow, it was the attire of a businesswoman, of the former executive I used to be before Daniel and I built a life together. I wanted to walk into that law office, not as someone begging for scraps, but as someone standing tall, prepared, just as Daniel had asked me to be. I arrived 5 minutes early. The glass doors of the law firm gleamed under the afternoon sun, and there they were, Michael, Chris, and Emily lined up, side by side, like a wall waiting for me. Well, well, Michael sneered as I walked closer. If it isn't the gold digger, right on time to see what crumbs might fall off the table. I met his stare calmly. Hello, Michael. Mr. Stein is expecting me. Michael smirked. Let me save you some embarrassment. You're not in the will. Dad may have fallen for your act while he was alive, but he wasn't dumb enough to leave you anything after death. Is that so? I asked, keeping my voice even. We already saw the draft, Emily added, her voice not as sharp as her brother's, but still dismissive. Everything goes to us like it should. Chris stayed quiet, just watching me with cold, careful eyes. Michael leaned closer. So you can go back to your little life, accept that it's over. Whatever plan you thought you had, it failed. I didn't argue. Instead, I reached into my handbag and pulled out a sealed envelope. On the front, in bold, familiar handwriting, was the name Mr. Stein. It was Daniel's writing. Would you please give this to Mr. Stein? I said, my voice calm. He's expecting it. Michael hesitated, glaring at the envelope like it was toxic. What is this? Your last trick to claw something out of us. Mr. Stein will explain, I said quietly. Just then, the lawyer himself appeared at the door. Ah, Mrs. Bennet, you're here. Please, come in. We're ready to begin. She doesn't need to be here, Michael snapped, still holding the envelope. This is family business. Mr. Stein looked at him, unbothered. On the contrary, your father was very clear that Mrs. Bennet be present, and I see you've brought the envelope. Thank you. Now, shall we? I walked past Daniel's children, my heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Behind me, I could feel their suspicion, their anger, their confusion. Inside the conference room, Mr. Stein opened the envelope and scanned the contents. His face shifted, first surprise, then understanding, and then something that almost looked like admiration. He looked up at me with respect that hadn't been there before. I see, he murmured. Daniel always did think ahead. The children walked in, confident, smug, certain they knew what was coming. They had no idea. The envelope wasn't a plea. It wasn't a last-minute cry for help. It was the final piece of a plan Daniel and I had made together, carefully, lovingly, during those long, painful nights. A plan that was about to change everything. The conference room was silent, except for the soft sound of papers moving as Mr. Stein pulled out Daniel's final will. The polished wooden table reflected the nervous faces around it, mine calm and steady. There's confident and smug. Michael sat with his arms crossed, his chin lifted like a king about to claim his crown. Emily sat upright, pretending to be polite, but clearly expecting victory. Chris, the quiet one, leaned back, studying everything with sharp, guarded eyes. They all thought they had already won. They had seen an earlier draft of the will, the one Daniel had deliberately left behind to test them. They believed all the money, the houses, the business, everything was theirs. But Daniel had been smarter than they ever gave him credit. Mr. Stein cleared his throat, slipping on his glasses. Before I begin, I need you all to understand something. The will I'm about to read is Daniel Bennett's final will. It replaces any earlier versions you may have seen. This one is legally binding, properly signed, and witnessed. Michael's smug grin flickered, just slightly, skipped the formalities. "Harold," he said, tapping the table impatiently. "Just get to the part where we inherit." Mr. Stein looked at him over his glasses, unimpressed. "As you wish. But I remind you, Daniel wanted this read fully and clearly." He turned a few pages and began. "Regarding the distribution of my estate, to my wife Anna Bennett, I leave 70% of my estate. This includes, but is not limited to, my primary home, my investments, and controlling shares in Bennett properties." The words hung in the air like thunder. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Michael exploded. "What?" he shouted, pushing his chair back. His face turned red, his jaw tight with rage. "That's impossible. We saw the will. This is a fake. A setup." But Mr. Stein didn't flinch. He kept reading as if Michael hadn't spoken. "To each of my children, Michael, Chris, and Emily, I leave 10% of my estate. However, these portions are to be managed in trust, under the care of my wife, Anna Bennett, until each of you demonstrates financial responsibility and personal growth." According to the conditions listed in Appendix B, Emily gasped and covered her mouth with her hand. "Managed? What does that mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It means," Mr. Stein explained calmly, "that while each of you will inherit 10%, you will not have free control over those funds. Mrs. Bennett will manage the assets. You will receive regular allowances, but major financial decisions will require her approval." Chris leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "On what grounds?" he asked. "Why would my father put her in charge of our money? He only knew her for 8 years. Without speaking, Mr. Stein reached into his case and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Your father expected that question. He left this letter to be read today." My heart skipped. I had never seen this letter. Daniel had written it in private. Mr. Stein unfolded the pages, the bold handwriting instantly recognizable. His voice was steady as he read. "My dear children, if you are hearing this, then you already know your inheritance has conditions. I expect you are angry, confused, and probably blaming Anna. Let me be clear, this arrangement was entirely my idea. It was not Anna's influence. It came after years of watching you treat money as something owed to you, rather than a responsibility. Michael, your failed business ventures have cost millions. Instead of learning, you repeated the same mistakes, always asking for more. Chris, your gambling has nearly destroyed you, not once, but twice. I saved you both times with my money, but it only allowed you to continue without facing real consequences. Emily, your design talent is real, but you have given up again and again whenever work became difficult. You expect success without effort, and that is not how life works. In contrast, Anna built her own career in finance before I even met her. She knows how to handle money with both care and responsibility. Most importantly, she loved me for who I was, not for what I could provide. That is something I was never sure of with any of you. This arrangement is not punishment. It is my last attempt to help you become the people I know you can be. Anna has agreed to guide you, mentor you, and support you in this journey. If you fight this, you risk losing everything. If you work with her, not only will you secure your inheritance, but you might also gain the skills and wisdom to truly honor it. Remember this, a parent's greatest legacy is not money, but the values they pass on. I fear I failed to teach you those values. This is my final chance. With love, Your father, Daniel Bennett. When Mr. Stein finished reading, silence filled the room. Michael sat frozen, fists clenched, his face pale. His earlier rage was replaced by shock. Emily stared down at the table, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Only Chris kept looking at me, his face unreadable. Mr. Stein folded the letter and placed it neatly back on the table. This will has been signed and witnessed by legal authorities. It also includes affidavits from Daniel's doctors confirming his full mental capacity. There is no question of its validity. Michael found his voice, shaking with anger. This is her doing, he shouted, pointing directly at me. She tricked him, turned him against us. She manipulated him when he was dying. I looked at him calmly. Your father and I spoke about this for months. He was clear. This was his decision, Michael. Not mine. We'll contest it, he growled. Turning to Mr. Stein, we'll prove she influenced him. Mr. Stein shook his head. I would strongly advise against that. Daniel included a contest clause. If any of you challenge this will in court, your inheritance is forfeited. Your share will go directly to the Bennett Foundation instead. Emily gasped. That's insane. Dad wouldn't do that. He did, I said softly. Not to punish you, but to protect his legacy. He believed in you, even when you disappointed him. He wanted to give you structure, to give you one last chance. Chris finally spoke, his voice calm but cutting. What exactly are these conditions? Mr. Stein pulled another set of papers. The conditions are detailed in Appendix B. In short, you must show financial responsibility, contribute to the family business or another meaningful pursuit, and show personal growth. These will be evaluated by Anna, myself, and Dr. Winters. Your father's close friend and psychologist. Michael slammed his hand on the table. So she controls everything. Our homes, our money, our lives. Not exactly, I replied, finally addressing him directly. Your father left each of you your homes outright. You'll also receive monthly allowances that cover your current lifestyle. But the larger assets of the business, the properties, the investments, those remain in trust until you prove you're ready. Emily wiped her tears with the back of her hand. And if we don't, if we refuse to play this game, then the assets stay in trust, I explained gently. They'll be preserved for future generations. Your children will have the chance to earn them when they come of age. The weight of my words settled over the room. For the first time, they realized their father had built a system they couldn't escape, not by waiting me out, not by suing, not by trickery. Mr. Stein closed the will. I suggest you all take time to review this. Talk to your own attorneys, if you like. But I must warn you, the will is ironclad. Mrs. Bennett is also willing to meet with each of you individually. To discuss how to move forward, Michael stood suddenly, his chair screeching against the floor. He glared at me, his eyes full of hatred. This isn't over. He stormed out of the room. Emily followed quickly, avoiding eye contact. Only Chris remained, watching me with calculating eyes. You knew about this the whole time? He said quietly. Yes, I replied. Your father and I had no secrets, and you're really prepared to handle all this. Running the business, controlling the estate, dealing with 3 of us who hate you. I met his stare without flinching. Your father believed I could. More importantly, he believed it was necessary. Chris nodded slowly, as if turning over the idea in his mind. Without another word, he stood and left, closing the door gently behind him. Mr. Stein exhaled, stacking the papers neatly. Well, that went about as well as could be expected, he said. Daniel predicted every reaction, I murmured, the weight of grief pressing on me. Michael's anger, Emily's tears, Chris's calculations. He knew them all so well. And he knew you'd handle it, Mr. Stein added gently. The real work begins now, Anna. Are you ready? I thought of Daniel's last moments, of the promise I made to him as he held my hand. I'll try. I'll protect what you've built. I'll guide them if I can. I'm ready, I whispered. Not because I wanted power, but because Daniel had trusted me with this. It was his last gift, his last request, and I would honor it, no matter how hard the road ahead would be. This part will cover what happens right after the will reading, Michael's fury, Emily's withdrawal, Chris's first private talk with Anna, and the first attempt to challenge her authority through a court hearing. I'll keep it basic English, in voice-over tone, approximately 1,500 words, flowing smoothly from Part 2, Part 3, rewritten in simple English voice-over style. The days after the will reading were as heavy as storm clouds. Just as Daniel had predicted, his children didn't accept the news quietly. Michael was the first to act. Within 24 hours, he had already spoken to 3 different attorneys. He was desperate to find a loophole, a weak spot in Daniel's plan. But each lawyer gave him the same answer. The will was airtight. Daniel had built it carefully, with layers of protection. The clause about contesting the will left Michael with no real weapon. If he filed a challenge, he risked losing his entire share. Still, that didn't stop him from looking for other ways. Emily reacted differently. She shut herself away, ignoring every call or text I sent. I even asked Margaret, Daniel's loyal assistant, to reach out to her. Margaret later told me she had seen Emily crying during lunches with her mother, Sylvia. I had no doubt Sylvia was whispering poison into her daughter's ears, encouraging her to fight me, to resent me even more. Dr. Chris, however, surprised me. 3 days after the reading, he requested a meeting. He arrived at Daniel's Now My Home right on time, dressed in a suit that reminded me painfully of his father. We sat in Daniel's study, the room still filled with his presence. The leather chair, the neat desk, the faint smell of his cologne on the fabric. Chris wasted no time with small talk. I've reviewed Appendix B, he said, his voice calm but sharp. Some of these conditions seem subjective. What exactly counts as personal growth? What exactly counts as meaningful contribution? I met his stare. Your father was specific. Meaningful contribution means either managing a division of Bennett properties successfully or proving yourself in another venture that creates real value. As for personal growth, your father outlined that too. It includes addressing the behaviors that harmed you most. Chris's face tightened. You mean gambling? Yes, I replied softly but firmly. He wanted you to attend regular sessions with Dr. Winters. He believed ignoring it would destroy you. He wasn't willing to fund another downward spiral. Chris looked around the study, his eyes scanning the books, the photos, the trophies Daniel had collected. You haven't changed anything in here, he said. Not yet, I admitted. Some spaces need time before they can be touched. He gave a small nod, almost as if he understood. But then his expression hardened again. Michael's talking to lawyers about having you declared incompetent as trustee. He's going to say, grief has clouded your judgment, that you're unfit to handle all this. I allowed myself a faint smile. We expected that. Daniel even prepared for it. Last month, I completed an independent psychological evaluation at his request. The doctors confirmed my mental health and decision-making ability. And as for experience, I spent 30 years in finance. I was CFO of Barrett Industries. This is not beyond me. Chris raised an eyebrow. So he really thought of everything? Yes, I said quietly. He knew his children well. He knew exactly how each of you would react. For the first time, Chris leaned back and asked a question that seemed genuine. "What do you really want from us?" I took a breath. "What your father wanted. For you to learn responsibility, to build instead of destroy, to become more than people who just spend what was given to them. If you work through these conditions, you'll inherit not only wealth, but the wisdom to manage it. If you refuse, you'll still have comfort, allowances, homes, but the larger legacy will remain in trust, waiting for future generations." Chris stayed quiet, processing my words. Finally, he asked, "Can I see the company's financials? If I'm to consider a role, I should know what I'd be dealing with." I had been waiting for this. I handed him a folder with reports I'd prepared. "The company is stable. Boston and Chicago markets are strong. Miami is underperforming, but that's due to the market, not operations. I've already renegotiated contracts and cut inefficiencies. The numbers are improving." He scanned the documents carefully, his sharp mind at work. Slowly, his expression shifted from skeptical to almost impressed. "These returns are better than Dad reported last quarter." "I made adjustments," I admitted. Daniel trusted me, and I wasn't going to let him down. He closed the folder and looked at me. "You've been busy. When did you have time to grieve?" The question caught me off guard. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I grieved while I cared for your father. I grieve every day while honoring his wishes. Grief doesn't stop me from doing what he asked." Chris studied me in silence. For a moment I thought I saw a flicker of respect. Then, almost casually, he said, "You should know our mother is encouraging Michael. She thinks she deserves part of the estate, even after the divorce settlement. She likely joined the fight." I nodded. Daniel expected that too. When Chris left, I sat alone in Daniel's chair, tracing my fingers over the worn leather. "I'm trying, Daniel," I whispered into the empty room. "Just like you wanted. But they're fighting me at every turn." That night, my fears became reality. I received a cold, professional notice from Michael's lawyer. He had filed for an emergency hearing, demanding I be removed as trustee for incompetence. I picked up the phone immediately. "It's happening just as Daniel predicted," I told Mr. Stein. He sighed on the other end. "Then it's time for phase 2. The hearing was scheduled for Wednesday morning. Michael had chosen a quick timeline, no doubt hoping to catch me unprepared. But Daniel had prepared me for everything. I arrived at the courthouse 15 minutes, early with Mr. Stein by my side. Dr. Susan Winters joined us to Daniel's trusted friend, the same psychologist who had helped us design the conditions. Across the aisle sat Michael and Emily, their lawyer, Mr. Walsh, at the front. He was a shark famous for tearing apart families in inheritance battles. Chris was absent, which didn't surprise me. He was too smart to throw himself into a losing fight this early. "Interesting," Mr. Stein murmured beside me. "The middle child didn't join them." I nodded quietly. Daniel always said Chris would be the first to see reason. Michael glanced back at me, his expression hardening when he noticed Dr. Winters. Her presence clearly wasn't part of his plan. The judge entered, a stern woman with a sharp gaze. She wasted no time. "Mr. Walsh, you filed to remove Mrs. Bennett as trustee on grounds of emotional instability and lack of experience. Given the urgency, I assume you have strong evidence." Walsh rose smoothly. "Yes, Your Honor. The respondent is clearly suffering from grief that clouds her judgment. She is unqualified to manage an estate worth hundreds of millions." The judge looked unimpressed. "And your evidence?" Walsh straightened his papers. "We have statements from family members observing Mrs. Bennett's unstable state. We also have concerns raised by business associates. Hearsay and opinion," Mr. Stein cut in. "Not evidence." The judge nodded. "Do you have anything substantial?" Mr. Walsh? Walsh hesitated, then pulled out documents. Your Honor, Mrs. Bennet has already made changes to the company without consulting stakeholders. This shows recklessness. The judge reviewed them briefly. These are vendor renegotiations and efficiency measures, normal business decisions. And by the looks of it, they increased returns. Mr. Stein added smoothly, in fact, quarterly returns rose by 4.3% under her guidance. Walsh frowned but pressed on. There's also the suspicious timing of her marriage to Mr. Bennet. A short courtship, marrying a man decades older, right before his decline. It suggests opportunism. I felt anger rise, but Dr. Winters placed a calming hand on mine. Objection, Mr. Stein said firmly. That's irrelevant to her competency as trustee. Sustained, the judge agreed. Stick to the facts, Mr. Walsh. Walsh's voice grew sharper. We believe she exerted undue influence over Mr. Bennet in his final days. The judge leaned forward. That is a matter for contesting the will, not this hearing. And I remind you of the contest clause. Michael's face turned pale at the mention of losing everything. Walsh quickly backtracked. We're not contesting. Your Honor was simply questioning her capacity. Then, show me evidence of incapacity. The judge said firmly, it was our turn. Mr. Stein presented my full resume, 30 years in financial management, including CFO of a billion-dollar company. He also provided Dr. Winter's recent psychological evaluation, confirming my excellent mental health. Finally, he handed over an independent report Daniel had ordered before his death, proving my financial competence beyond question. The judge reviewed it all, then set the papers down. I see no grounds whatsoever to remove Mrs. Bennet. Petition denied. Michael shot to his feet. This isn't justice. She manipulated him, and now she's manipulating this court. Control yourself, the judge snapped, or I'll hold you in contempt. Emily tugged at his sleeve, trying to calm him. The gavel came down. The case was over. Outside the courtroom, Michael brushed past me without a word, his anger radiating off him like heat. Emily followed, her expression conflicted. Round one goes to us, Mr. Stein said softly as we stepped into the sunlight. But this is only the beginning. Michael won't stop. I know, I replied. Daniel told me he'd try at least 3 times before changing strategy. This was only the first. Double quotes. Dr. Winters nodded. He'll escalate. That's his nature. As we walked down the courthouse steps, I saw Chris waiting by a sleek black car. His posture was calm, his face unreadable. He stepped forward and opened the door. Anna, he said quietly, I'd like a word. I glanced at Mr. Stein, who gave a small nod. Go, see what he wants. I slid into the car with Chris, closing the door behind us. You were ready for everything, he said, not looking at me. Double quotes, yes, I replied softly. Daniel made sure of it. Michael won't stop. You embarrassed him today. He'll only get worse. I studied his face, searching for his motive. Why are you telling me this? Why weren't you in that courtroom with them? Chris was silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, because I've been looking at the numbers. At the company, at Dad's decisions, and I think he might have been right about us, about not being ready. It was the first crack, the first sign Daniel's plan was working. What are you proposing, Chris? I asked carefully. He turned to meet my eyes. I want to meet the conditions. I want to learn, not to please you, not to get the money faster, but because I think Dad was trying to tell us something, and I'm ready to listen. For the first time since Daniel's death, I felt a spark of hope. Then we start tomorrow, I said firmly. 9 a.m. at Bennett Properties. Chris nodded. and as I stepped out of the car, he called after me. One more thing. Michael's going after Emily next. He'll try to pull her deeper to his side. She's vulnerable. Watch out. His words stayed with me. For the first time, I saw a path forward, not an easy one, but a real one. Daniel's plan was in motion. The next morning, right at 9, Chris walked into Bennett's Properties. He didn't come in flashy or arrogant, like Michael always did. He was dressed simply, carrying nothing but a notebook and pen. "Where do we start?" he asked as soon as he saw me. It surprised me. For so long, I had seen only his cold, guarded side. But now, there was something different in his voice. Not humility exactly, but a readiness to prove himself. "Let's start with the basics," I said, leading him to the conference room. I had prepared binders, charts, and a clear outline. Daniel always believed in structure, and I was determined to teach that way too. For the next several hours, we went through the company's finances, its current projects, and the challenges ahead. Chris asked sharp questions, his mind quick to pick up patterns. "This Miami division," he said, pointing to a graph. "Why are we still bleeding money here? Wouldn't it make more sense to sell?" "Because the market is temporary," I explained. "If we hold steady and improve efficiency, the value will recover. Selling now would mean taking a loss your father never would have accepted." He nodded slowly, jotting notes. "So patience matters as much as timing." "Yes," I said. "That's one of the lessons your father wanted you to learn. Wealth isn't about grabbing quick wins. It's about long-term vision." Chris leaned back, absorbing my words. For the first time, I saw the same spark of intelligence Daniel used to carry in meetings by the end of the day. Chris looked exhausted but thoughtful. "I didn't expect to actually like this," he admitted. "Your father built this company with more than money," I reminded him. "He built it with vision. If you let yourself see that, you might find something worth carrying forward." Chris left with the binder tucked under his arm, promising to return the next day, while Chris was opening himself to learning. Emily was sinking deeper into confusion. I reached out to her again, inviting her for lunch. To my surprise, she accepted. We met at a quiet cafe in the city. She arrived in a pale blue dress, looking delicate, her eyes tired. She hugged me quickly, almost nervously, before sitting down. "Thank you for coming," I said warmly. "I know things have been difficult." Emily stirred her coffee. "Michael says you're just trying to control us. That this was all your plan. That you convinced Dad to cut us out." I kept my voice calm. "Do you really believe that, Emily?" She hesitated. "I don't know. Sometimes I wonder. Dad loved us, but he was always frustrated too. I thought he was just hard on us because he wanted more for us." "He did," I said softly. "And this was his way of giving you one last chance. Not to punish, but to guide." Her eyes filled with tears. "I just miss him. I thought if he left me something bigger, it would feel like he still trusted me." I reached across the table, gently touching her hand. "He trusted you enough to want you to grow. That's why he gave you conditions, because he believed you could meet them." Emily blinked back her tears, nodding slightly. But before I could say more, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression darkened. "It's Michael," she murmured. "He doesn't want me talking to you." "Then maybe that means you should," I said gently. She gave me a small, conflicted smile before leaving. I watched her walk away, my heart heavy. Emily was caught in the middle, torn between loyalty to her brother and the truth her father had left behind. Michael, on the other hand, wasn't torn about anything. His anger had only deepened after losing in court. From what Margaret later told me, He had begun hosting late-night meetings at his home with old business partners. These weren't respectable men, they were opportunists, risk-takers, people who had once fueled Michael's failed ventures. "He's planning something," Margaret whispered one afternoon in my office. I overheard him. "He wants to prove you're unfit by causing a scandal in the company. Something big enough to ruin your credibility." I sighed, not surprised. Daniel had warned me Michael would grow reckless. He would lash out when cornered, not realizing he was only hurting himself. Still, I couldn't underestimate him. Michael was dangerous not because of his intelligence, but because of his pride. Pride made people desperate. Desperate people made reckless choices. That night, as I locked up Daniel's study, I spoke into the quiet room. "He's coming after me, Daniel. Just like you said. But I won't let him destroy what you've built." The next week, Chris kept showing up, steady and consistent. We reviewed financial models, toured properties, even sat in on negotiations. During one meeting with contractors, Chris surprised me by speaking up. "These costs don't add up," he said firmly, pointing at the proposal. "If you're padding this contract, we'll walk away." The contractors shifted uncomfortably, realizing they couldn't fool him. When the meeting ended, I turned to Chris. "That was good. You spoke with confidence." He shrugged, but I could see the pride in his eyes. I paid attention. "That's what Dad would have done, right?" "Yes," I said softly. "That's exactly what he would have done." For a brief second, I saw Daniel in him, not the reckless son who gambled or avoided responsibility, but the sharp man his father always hoped he'd become. Emily remained distant, answering only occasionally when I reached out. But one evening, she called me out of the blue. "Anna," she whispered, her voice shaky. "Michael's planning something. He wants to sabotage the company. He says if the board sees you as a failure, they'll have to remove you." My chest tightened. "Emily, do you know what he's planning exactly?" "No," she admitted. "He won't tell me everything. Just that he's going to expose you. I don't want to be part of it, but he says I have to stand with him. That if I don't, I'm betraying Dad." "You're not betraying your father by refusing to harm what he built," I told her firmly. "You'd be honoring him by protecting it." She sniffled quietly. "I don't know what to do. Come see me tomorrow," I said gently. "We'll talk. I'll help you." But she never showed the next day. Word spread through the company of a sudden rumor that I had been mismanaging funds, funneling money into private accounts. The story spread fast, whispered in halls, murmured in meetings. I knew immediately where it came from, Michael. But Daniel had prepared for this too. Within hours, Mr. Stein and I released a full audit of the company's accounts, something Daniel had ordered before his death, anticipating this exact attack. The audit proved every cent was clean, every transaction accounted for. The rumor collapsed before it could take root. Still, the damage wasn't just financial, it was emotional. Trust had been tested, and once tested, it was never quite the same. That night, Chris stayed late at the office, reviewing documents beside me. At one point, he looked up and asked, "Why do you keep fighting like this? You could walk away, take your share, and live peacefully. Why stay in this storm?" I met his eyes. "Because your father asked me to. Because he trusted me to protect all of you, even if you don't see it yet. I won't walk away from that." Chris studied me, then gave a slow nod. "Then maybe I chose the right side." His words gave me strength. Meanwhile, Michael's frustration was boiling. His plan had failed, and worse, his siblings were slipping through his fingers. Chris was spending time with me, growing more confident each day. Emily was uncertain, drifting between loyalty and doubt. Michael felt his control weakening, and for someone like him, That was unbearable. Late one evening, after another failed meeting with his so-called allies, he slammed his glass down and shouted, "If I can't beat her with lawyers, and I can't beat her with rumors, then I'll beat her with force." Those around him fell silent, uneasy. They knew what Michael was suggesting. They also knew crossing the line into illegal territory was dangerous, but Michael didn't care. His pride had blinded him. He was ready to risk everything, even prison, just to take me down. The storm Daniel predicted was no longer on the horizon. It was here, and I could feel it. Pressing closer every day, the company was steady. Stronger even, after the failed rumors Michael had spread. But peace never lasted long where Michael was concerned. One evening, I got a call from Margaret. Her voice was sharp with worry. "Anna, you need to know this. Michael has been contacting board members directly, trying to convince them you're incompetent. He's promising them favors, positions, even money if they side with him against you." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "Thank you, Margaret. Keep me updated on anything else you hear." Daniel had warned me Michael wouldn't stop until he burned every bridge. Still, hearing it happen in real time made my chest ache. The next morning, I sat across from Chris in the conference room. He had been working hard, showing up daily, and slowly earning respect from the staff. "Michael is making moves again," I told him, sliding a report across the table. "He's pressuring the board." Chris scanned the paper, his brow furrowed. "He'll only weaken the company by doing this. They'll see it eventually." "They might," I admitted. "But Michael is persuasive when he wants to be. He knows how to manipulate with charm and promises. That's how he's failed so many ventures, by convincing people to back him until the money ran out." Chris tapped his pen against the page, thinking, "What's our counter?" "Our counter is performance," I said firmly. "Numbers don't lie. If the company keeps growing under our leadership, no one can deny it." Chris gave a small nod. "Then let's make sure the numbers shine." That afternoon, Emily appeared in my office unexpectedly. Her face was pale, her movements restless. "Emily," I said softly, surprised. "I didn't think you'd come." She sat down quickly, her hands twisting in her lap. "I shouldn't be here. Michael will kill me if he knows I came." I leaned forward gently. "You're always welcome here. You don't need permission from your brother." Her eyes filled with tears. "He says I'm weak, that I always pick the wrong side. He says if I don't stand with him, I'm betraying Dad." My heart ached for her. She was caught in the middle of a war she never wanted. "Emily," I said softly, "your father loved you for who you were, not for what side you stood on. He left you conditions not because he doubted you, but because he believed you could grow stronger. Don't let Michael use your grief to control you." She sniffled, nodding faintly. "I want to believe you. But he's so angry all the time. It scares me." "You don't have to be part of his anger," I whispered. "You can choose differently." Emily looked at me with wide, searching eyes, as if waiting for permission to step away from her brother's shadow. But before she could answer, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression tightening. "It's him. I have to go." She stood quickly, almost running from the room. I wanted to stop her, to tell her she didn't owe Michael her loyalty. But the words caught in my throat. Meanwhile, Michael was already sinking lower. Late one night, he met with one of his old associates, a man named Victor, in a dimly lit bar. "You want me to dig something up on her?" Victor asked, swirling his drink lazily. "I can do that. Everybody has skeletons." Michael leaned in, his voice harsh. "I don't care how. Find something, anything I can use to destroy her. Fake it if you have to. Just make it believable." Victor smirked. "Dangerous game." If it backfires, you're done. I don't care, Michael snapped. She's not taking what's mine. Victor studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. Fine, but it'll cost you. Michael didn't flinch. Do whatever it takes. Back at the company, Chris was making real progress. One afternoon, we walked through the construction site of a new high-rise in the city. Chris wore a hard hat, clipboard in hand. Moving with a confidence I hadn't seen before, he questioned contractors, checked safety measures, and even caught an error in the supply delivery that could have cost thousands afterward. As we stood overlooking the site, he turned to me. I see it now. What Dad was always talking about. This isn't just money. It's legacy. It's something real. I smiled faintly. Your father would be proud to hear you say that. Chris looked down, his voice quiet. I wish I'd said it sooner, before. His words trailed off, but I knew what he meant. You're saying it now, I reminded him gently. And that matters. For the first time, I saw in Chris not just potential, but genuine growth. Daniel's plan was working, but Michael was unraveling. The following week, a tabloid ran a story with a bold headline. Widow accused of hiding millions in secret accounts. The article claimed I had been siphoning money overseas, building a private empire while Daniel was dying. It included fake documents that looked convincing at first glance. When I saw the paper on my desk, my stomach sank, but instead of fear, I felt something else: determination. Daniel had prepared me for this too. Within hours, we held a press conference. Mr. Stein presented certified audits, proof of clean accounts, and a statement from the board confirming my transparency. The fake documents crumbled under scrutiny. The tabloid retracted the story 2 days later, but the damage lingered. Rumors were like smoke: you could clear the air, but the smell stayed. Michael, however, didn't care about consequences. To him, every attack was a battle worth fighting, even if he lost the war. Emily showed up at my door again, this time in tears. He's going too far, Anna, she sobbed. Michael hired someone to follow you. He said if you make one mistake, he'll expose it. He won't stop until he ruins you. I guided her to the couch, handing her tissues. Emily, listen to me. Your father wanted better for all of you. Michael is destroying himself with anger. You don't have to go down with him. She clutched the tissue tightly. But he's my brother. If I walk away, I lose him. You don't lose him, I said softly. You give him space to face the truth. Sometimes, stepping back is the only way someone can see the damage they're causing. She wiped her eyes, silent. I knew she wanted to believe me, but Michael's grip on her was still strong. Meanwhile, Chris kept showing loyalty in quiet but steady ways. One evening after a long day at the office, he walked me to my car. You should have security, he said firmly. I raised an eyebrow. Why? Because Michael's dangerous. He's not just talking anymore. He's acting. And when he runs out of legal tricks, he'll try something worse. I studied him carefully. Do you think he'd really go that far? Chris didn't hesitate. Yes, I know my brother. He hates losing more than anything. And right now, he thinks he's losing everything. His warning made my chest tighten. Daniel had prepared me for Michael's schemes, but the thought of real danger, physical danger, was something I wasn't ready for. Thank you for being honest, I said softly. Chris gave a short nod. You don't have to thank me. Dad trusted you, maybe. Maybe I should too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Daniel's voice in my head. Protect the company. Guide the children. Don't give in to fear. I looked at his photo on the nightstand, my heart aching. I'm trying, Daniel, I whispered into the darkness. But Michael is slipping further every day, and I don't know how much longer I can hold everything together. The next morning, an anonymous letter arrived at the office. It was simple, typed on plain paper. She's not what she seems. Watch closely. More will be revealed soon. I didn't need to guess where it came from. Michael had crossed another line, and deep down, I knew the real storm was still ahead. The letter stayed on my desk for hours, its words circling in my head like a shadow I couldn't shake. She's not what she seems. Watch closely. It was a threat, but more than that, it was a promise that Michael wasn't finished. By now, Daniel's voice in my memory had become like a guiding hand. He'll try everything, Anna. He'll push until there's nothing left to push. Don't let fear guide you. I took a deep breath and slipped the letter into a file marked Michael. I was keeping every attempt, every rumor, every threat. One day, I would need them all. The next morning, Chris arrived early. He walked straight into my office, his expression serious. I heard about the letter, he said, without waiting for me to bring it up. I frowned. How? Emily told me, he replied. She said Michael was bragging about it last night. He thinks he's scaring you. I shook my head. Your brother doesn't realize that fear only makes me stronger. Chris leaned forward, his voice low. Don't underestimate him. Michael's pride makes him reckless. Reckless people are dangerous. His words were heavy, and I knew they weren't just warnings, they were promises. Are you saying I should be afraid of him? I asked softly. I'm saying you should be prepared, Chris said firmly. Get security, cameras, guards if you need them. Because if Michael can't ruin you with lies, he'll try something else. I studied his face, seeing not just Daniel's son, but a man slowly learning to step into responsibility. You sound more like your father every day, I told him. For the first time, Chris gave me a faint smile. That's the best compliment I've ever gotten. Later that week, Emily showed up at the house unexpectedly. She looked pale, her eyes puffy from crying. Emily, I said gently, letting her in. What's wrong? She paced across the living room, her hands shaking. Michael's out of control. He said he's going to hire someone to dig up dirt on you. If they can't find anything, he'll make something up. I stayed calm, though inside my chest tightened. He already tried that with the tabloids. It didn't work. This is different, Emily said urgently. He's not talking about articles anymore. He's talking about ruining your life, personally, not just the company. I guided her to the couch, sitting beside her. Emily, listen to me. You don't have to carry his burden. You don't have to be part of this. Tears slid down her cheeks. But he's my brother. If I turn away from him, what kind of sister does that make me? It makes you a strong one, I said softly. Sometimes, love means refusing to help someone destroy themselves. She buried her face in her hands. I just wanted to stop. I want us to be a family again. My heart ached. That's what your father wanted too. But Michael isn't ready to see it. Not yet. Emily looked up, her voice trembling. Then what do we do? I took her hands in mine. We keep going. We stay steady. And we wait for Michael to see that this fight isn't against MIDS, against himself. The following evening, I stayed late at the office. Most of the staff had already gone home, the building quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. I was reviewing documents when the sound of a door echoed down the hall up my body. Tensed, a shadow flickered across the glass wall of my office. I reached for my phone, ready to call Chris or Mr. Stein, but then a familiar voice spoke. Working late. I exhaled in relief. It was Chris. He stepped inside, holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you could use this, I smiled faintly. Thank you. You're starting to read my mind. He set the cup down and leaned against the desk. I stayed behind on purpose. I don't think you should be here alone. Not right now. I looked at him closely. Because of Michael. Yes, he admitted. He's getting desperate. When people get desperate, they stop caring about consequences. For a long moment, we sat in silence, sipping coffee in the dim light of the office. Finally, Chris spoke again. You know, I used to think you were the enemy, that you took my father from us, that you were here just for the money. I met his eyes quietly, and now, he sighed, his shoulders dropping. Now I see what Dad saw. You're not here for yourself. You're here because he asked you to be, and because you actually care. The honesty in his voice struck me deep. For the first time, I felt the wall between us begin to fall. Your father believed in you, I said softly. That's why he gave you these conditions. He knew you could rise to them. Chris nodded slowly. Then I'll prove him right. But Michael wasn't slowing down. A week later, the company's security reported something disturbing. Surveillance cameras had caught a car circling the headquarters late at night. Its license plate traced back to one of Michael's associates. They're watching you, the head of security warned me. This isn't just business anymore. I tightened my grip on the report. Thank you. Increase patrols. I want every corner of this building covered. That evening, I called Mr. Stein. He's crossing into dangerous territory, I told him. Stein's voice was calm, but I could hear the concern underneath. We'll document everything. If Michael steps too far, we'll have the evidence to protect you. Daniel always said Michael's pride would destroy him, I murmured. Pride blinds men to their own downfall, Stein agreed. But Anna, don't underestimate him. He'll fight until there's nothing left. Meanwhile, Emily was reaching her breaking point. One afternoon, she came to the office trembling, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael gave me papers to sign, she confessed, clutching a folder. He said it's just to unite the siblings against you. But I read it. It's a petition to strip you of control. If I sign, it gives him leverage in court. I opened the folder, scanning the pages. My heart sank. Michael was trying to use Emily as a weapon. You don't have to sign this, I told her gently. Her eyes filled with tears. But if I don't, he'll hate me. He'll never forgive me. I took her hands in mine. Emily, sometimes doing the right thing means people you love will be angry. But your father trusted you with more than loyalty. He trusted you with integrity. Don't let Michael take that from you. She shook her head, sobbing softly. I can't. I don't know how to say no to him. I hugged her tightly, holding her as she cried. Inside, I felt both sorrow and determination. Emily was fragile, but she wasn't hopeless. She just needed someone to stand by her until she found her own strength. The storm kept building, but Chris was becoming my anchor. He threw himself into the company, showing up early, staying late, even winning over board members who once doubted him. Slowly, people began to see him not just as Daniel's son, but as a leader in his own right. One evening, after a long day, he said something that gave me hope. Michael's losing ground, Chris said. People are tired of his anger. They see what he's doing to Emily. They see what he's trying to do to you. It's only a matter of time before he burns out. I nodded, though my heart knew better. He won't stop until he destroys himself. Chris gave me a steady look. Then we'll be ready when he does. But just as things seemed to settle, the phone rang late one night. It was Margaret, her voice trembling. Anna, she whispered, you need to be careful. Michael isn't just talking anymore. He's planning something physical. He's angry enough to do real harm. My chest tightened. What do you mean? I don't know the details, she admitted. But I heard him say, if I can't win in court, I'll win in the streets. Her words echoed in my ears. Long after the call ended, Michael had finally crossed the invisible line Daniel had warned me about. This was no longer just about inheritance. This was war. The words from Margaret's late night call echoed in my head for days. If I can't win in court, I'll win in the streets. Michael wasn't just angry anymore. He was dangerous. I increased security at both the house and the company. Cameras were installed on every corner. Guards rotated shifts, and my driver was instructed to never take the same route twice. I hated living this way, but I had no choice. Daniel had trusted me to protect his legacy, and I wasn't going to let his son destroy it with violence. Still, no matter how many precautions I took, I couldn't quiet the unease in my chest. One evening, after finishing a meeting with contractors, Chris offered to drive me home. You shouldn't be alone at night right now, he said simply. Holding open the car door, I slid in, grateful. You've been watching over me a lot lately, I told him softly. He gave a small shrug. Somebody has to. Michael's not just bluffing anymore. I can see it in him. He's too far gone. I studied Chris as the streetlights flickered across his face. He had changed so much in just a few weeks. The sharp, reckless edge that once defined him was softening, replaced with determination and strength. For the first time, I truly believed Daniel's plan might succeed at least with one of his children. When we pulled into the driveway, Chris didn't immediately leave. He leaned on the steering wheel, his expression serious. Anna, he said quietly, if Michael does something stupid, if he actually tries to hurt you, don't protect him. Don't cover for him just because he's family. Promise me you'll fight back. I nodded slowly, my throat tight. I promise. The very next morning, trouble arrived. Emily came to my office, her hands trembling as she clutched a sealed envelope. Michael made me bring this, she whispered. Placing it on the desk, I frowned. What is it? I don't know, she said, tears brimming in her eyes. He just said if I didn't deliver it, he'd cut me out of his life completely. He said I'd be dead to him. I reached across the desk, squeezing her hand gently. Emily, you don't have to let him use you like this. Her lip trembled. I don't know how to stop him. He scares me, Anna. Sometimes he reminds me of Dad when he was angry but worse. Like he's hollow inside. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper with bold black letters. Step down or face the consequences. My stomach turned cold. Emily burst into tears. I didn't want to give it to you, I swear. But he said he'd make me regret it if I didn't. I pulled her into a hug, holding her as she sobbed against my shoulder. This isn't your fault. This is Michael's choice, not yours. She shook her head, whispering, I'm so sorry, Anna. I don't know how to save him. You can't, I murmured gently. He has to save himself. That night, the consequences Michael had threatened nearly became reality. I was leaving the office with Chris when we noticed a black car idling across the street. Its windows were tinted, engine running. Stay here, Chris said firmly. Stepping forward, Chris, wait, I began. But he was already walking toward the car. The driver revved the engine, then sped off into the night before Chris could get close. He returned, jaw tight. That wasn't random. That was a warning. I exhaled shakily. Michael, Chris nodded grimly. He's trying to scare you into stepping down. But don't. That's exactly what he wants. I looked into his eyes, seeing not just Daniel's son, but a man ready to protect his father's legacy. I won't step down, I said firmly. Not now, not ever. Chris gave a small smile. Good, because I'm not letting him win. A few days later, the company's quarterly board meeting arrived. It was the first major test since Daniel's death. Michael showed up, uninvited but determined to cause chaos. He strode into the boardroom, dressed in a sharp suit, his confidence loud and poisonous. Emily trailed behind him, eyes downcast. "I have a proposal," Michael announced, before the meeting could even begin. "Remove Anna as trustee and CEO. Replace her with me. She's weak, she's unqualified, and she's already bringing scandal to this company." The room buzzed with uneasy murmurs. I stood calmly, letting my voice cut through the noise. "This company has grown 4% in profit since I stepped in. Expenses are down. Projects are on track. Every number speaks for itself." Chris stood as well, surprising everyone. "She's right. I've reviewed the numbers myself. The company is healthier than it's been in years. Dad trusted Anna for a reason, and I trust her too." Michael's face darkened. "You're siding with her, against your own blood." Chris didn't flinch. "I'm siding with what's right. You're not thinking about the company. You're thinking about yourself. That's why Dad didn't trust you." The board members exchanged looks, whispering among themselves. One by one, they nodded. The chairman finally spoke. "The board supports Mrs. Bennett's leadership. Until further notice, she remains CEO." Michael's face turned red with fury. He slammed his fist on the table. "This isn't over," he shouted, storming out. Emily followed, torn and trembling. The room slowly calmed, but my heart kept racing. Michael was slipping further, losing control by the day. After the meeting, Chris found me in the hallway. "You stood your ground," he said with quiet admiration. "So did you," I replied. "Your father would have been proud." Chris looked down, almost shy. "I didn't do it for him. I did it because it's the truth. Michael doesn't deserve this company. He doesn't deserve your trust. But maybe I do." My chest tightened. For the first time, I saw the man Chris could become, the man Daniel always believed was hidden inside him. But as much as Chris was growing, Emily was breaking. That evening, she called me. Her voice shaking. "Anna," she whispered, "Michael's planning something. Something big. He didn't tell me everything, but I heard him say he's going to end it once and for all." Fear coursed through me. "Emily, where is he?" "I don't know," she cried. "But I think he's going to do something violent. I can't stop him." I tried to calm her, my own voice trembling. "Listen to me, Emily. Stay safe. Don't let him drag you into this. I'll handle Michael." When the call ended, I stood in the darkened study, staring at Daniel's photograph. "He's your son," I whispered. "But he's not the man you hoped he'd be. And now, Daniel, I don't know if I'll be able to save him." 2 nights later, the storm finally broke. I had just returned home when the sound of glass shattering echoed through the house. My heart pounded as I turned, and there he was. Michael, his eyes were wild, his face twisted with rage. "You should have stepped down when you had the chance," he hissed. "Now I'll make sure you regret it." Before I could react, Chris appeared from the shadows. He had anticipated this, waiting in case Michael tried something reckless. "Enough," Chris shouted, stepping between us. "This ends now," Michael sneered. "Out of the way, little brother. This doesn't concern you." "It does," Chris growled. "Because you're not just attacking her, you're destroying everything Dad built. And I won't let you." The brothers stood inches apart, years of resentment burning between them. For the first time, Chris wasn't backing down. And for the first time, Michael realized his little brother had finally grown strong enough to fight back. The house was filled with silence, heavy and electric. This was the breaking point, and I knew, no matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same again. The air between the two brothers was so heavy I could barely breathe. Chris stood tall, his jaw tight, his fists clenched, while Michael's face twisted with rage. "You always were the weak one," Michael spat, his voice shaking. "Hiding in Dad's shadow, gambling away your chances, letting him bail you out. And now suddenly you think you're strong. You think you can stand against me." Chris didn't flinch. "I don't think, Michael, I know. Because I'm not standing for me, I'm standing for Dad, and for the company. And for Anna." The mention of my name made Michael snap. He lunged forward, shoving Chris against the wall. Furniture toppled, glass shattered, the sound echoing through the house like thunder. "Michael, stop," I shouted, rushing forward. But Chris pushed back with a strength I hadn't seen in him before. He shoved his brother off, his voice low and steady. "You're not scaring me anymore. I won't let you ruin everything just because you can't control yourself." Michael's breathing grew heavy, his fists trembling at his sides. For a moment, I thought he would strike again, but then his eyes darted toward me, burning with hatred. "This is your fault," he hissed. "You turned him against me. You turned all of us against each other." I met his eyes calmly, though my hands trembled. "No, Michael. Your father's choices were his own. This anger, that's yours. Don't put it on me." Something cracked in him then, like glass shattering. He screamed, a raw, broken sound, and slammed his fist into the wall. Plaster cracked under the force. At that moment, Emily appeared in the doorway. She had followed Michael, terrified but unable to stay away. Her eyes went wide when she saw the chaos. Her brothers squared off, the room torn apart. "Michael, please," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Stop this. This isn't what Dad wanted." Michael turned on her, his eyes wild. "Don't you take her side too? You're my sister, Emily. Blood, you're supposed to stand with me." Emily shook her head, sobbing. "I've stood with you my whole life, Michael. But all it's ever done is hurt me, hurt us. Dad tried to save you, but you don't want saving, you just want control." Her words hit him like a blow. For a moment, Michael froze, staring at her as if he didn't recognize his own sister. Then his expression hardened into something cold and cruel. "You're weak," he snarled. Just like him, he stormed toward the door, shoving past her. Before leaving, he turned back, his voice like venom. "This isn't over. You'll regret choosing her over me." And then he was gone. The sound of the door slamming, shaking the house. The silence afterward was suffocating. Emily collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. Chris stood rigid, his fists still clenched, his chest rising and falling fast. I moved to Emily, wrapping my arms around her. "You did the right thing," I whispered, even as she cried harder. "You finally stood up for yourself." She shook her head, her voice breaking. "But I lost him. I lost my brother." I stroked her hair gently. "You didn't lose him, Emily. He lost himself. And until he's willing to find his way back, you can't follow him." Chris finally turned, his face pale but steady. "He's not going to stop, Anna. Tonight proved that. He'll keep pushing until one of us breaks." I looked at him quietly. "Then we don't break." The next morning, Mr. Stein arrived at the house after hearing what had happened. He sat across from us in the study, his expression grave. "This changes things," he said firmly. "Michael has moved beyond legal or financial attacks. He's now a physical threat. We need to involve the authorities." Emily's head shot up, panic in her eyes. "No, he's my brother. Please don't have him arrested, Emily, Stein said gently. If he continues like this, he could hurt someone. You saw it yourself. Tears spilled down her cheeks. But if he goes to jail, he'll never forgive me. Chris spoke then, his voice firm. Emily, forgiveness isn't the point anymore. Safety is. He's not just hurting himself anymore, he's hurting all of us. I placed a hand on Stein's arm. Not yet, I said softly. We'll document everything, keep records. But I don't want to see Michael in handcuffs unless there's no other choice. Stein frowned but nodded reluctantly. Very well, but be ready. If he crosses the line again, you may not have a choice. Over the next week, Michael disappeared. No calls, no visits, no rumors. Just silence. But silence wasn't peace. It was waiting. Chris doubled down at the company, stepping into leadership more boldly than ever. He oversaw projects, dealt with contractors, even calmed nervous investors who had heard whispers about family conflict. I watched him in meetings, confident and sharp, and for the first time, I felt Daniel's dream taking shape. His son wasn't just surviving the conditions, he was thriving under them. One evening, after a long day, Chris stopped by my office. Do you ever regret it? He asked suddenly. Regret what? Marrying Dad, putting yourself in the middle of all this. You could have had a simple life somewhere else, far away from all this chaos. I looked at him quietly. Daniel was the love of my life. Even with all the chaos, all the pain, I'd do it again. Because love doesn't ask if it's easy. It asks if it's worth it. And he was worth it. Chris was silent for a moment, then gave a small nod. I think I finally understand what he saw in you. His words touched me more than he could know. But peace never lasted. Late one night, Emily called again. Her voice was frantic. Anna, he's worse. Michael's drinking every night. He's talking about revenge, about taking back what's his no matter the cost. I'm scared, Anna. I don't know what he's capable of anymore. Where is he? I asked quickly. At Mom's house, she whispered. But he won't stay still. He's angry all the time. I can't reach him anymore. I closed my eyes, my heart heavy. Emily, you can't fix him. Only he can decide to change. But you need to protect yourself. Promise me you'll stay away when he's like this. Her silence told me she didn't want to promise. Finally, she whispered, I'll try. 2 days later, the breaking point came. Michael stormed into the company lobby, shouting at the top of his lungs. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, his hands shaking. Where is she? He roared. Where's the thief who stole everything from me? Security rushed to block him, but Michael shoved past them, charging toward the elevator stop. By the time I stepped out of my office, Chris was already there, standing firm in the middle of the lobby. Stop. Michael, Chris said, his voice calm but strong. This isn't the way. Out of my way. Michael snarled. She doesn't deserve this. I deserve it. Chris didn't move. No, you don't. Not like this. Dad trusted Anna because she earned it. You never did. And until you can face that, you'll never have what you want. For a moment, Michael froze. His eyes darted between his brother and me, rage battling with something deeper, pain, grief, fear. Then, with a furious scream, he lunged. But Chris was ready. He caught Michael by the shoulders, forcing him back with all his strength. The two brothers struggled, their shouts echoing through the building. Let it go, Michael, Chris shouted, before you destroy yourself completely. Michael broke free, stumbling, his chest heaving. His eyes flicked to me one last time, filled with hatred. This isn't over, he growled, and then he ran. disappearing out the doors into the night. The lobby fell silent. Employees stood frozen, whispering nervously, staring at me and Chris. I steadied my breath, lifting my chin. "Back to work," I said firmly. "This company doesn't stop for anyone's tantrum." Slowly, people returned to their desks. Chris stayed beside me, his hand resting gently on my arm. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, though my heart was pounding. "Thanks to you." For the first time, Chris smiled, truly smiled. Then maybe I'm finally becoming the man Dad hoped I'd be. And in that moment, I believed him. But as I looked out the glass doors into the darkness where Michael had fled, a chill crept through me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And the next move he made could be the most dangerous of all. The night Michael stormed out of the company building, something inside me told me it wasn't the end. It was just the pause before the worst storm yet. For days, there was no sign of him. No angry calls, no sudden appearances, no rumors in the press. Just silence. But silence from Michael was never peace. It was plotting. Emily came to me one morning, her face pale, her voice trembling. "He's not well," she whispered as soon as we sat down. I went to check on him. The house is a mess, bottles everywhere, blinds closed, papers scattered all over. He hasn't slept. He barely eats. He just paces and mutters about. Dad and you and Chris. He says he's going to take everything back. I reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "Emily, you can't keep putting yourself in the middle. It's not safe for you anymore." Tears filled her eyes. "But he's my brother, Anna. I can't just abandon him." "You're not abandoning him," I said softly. "You're protecting yourself. Michael has chosen his path. Until he decides to change, nothing you say will reach him." Her shoulders shook as she cried. "Why couldn't Dad fix him when he was alive? Why did he leave it to us?" "Because your father knew some lessons can only be learned the hard way," I whispered. He hoped Michael would rise to the challenge. But sometimes, love isn't enough to change someone. Meanwhile, Chris had thrown himself into the company more than ever. He was at every meeting, reviewing every project, talking to every employee. One afternoon, I watched him stand before a room full of contractors and investors, laying out plans for expansion into 2 new cities. His voice was clear, his arguments sharp, his presence commanding. As I sat in the back, listening, I felt my chest swell with something I hadn't felt since Daniel was alive. Pride, mixed with hope. When the meeting ended, people shook Chris's hand with respect, treating him not as a spoiled heir, but as a true leader. As we walked out together, I said quietly, "Your father would have been proud of that presentation." Chris glanced at me, a small smile tugging at his lips. I wasn't trying to be him. I was just trying to be better than who I was. "And you are," I told him firmly. "More than you realize." But Michael wasn't gone. He was waiting. One late night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You can't hide behind Chris forever. I'm coming for everything. Watch your back." I saved the message in the file marked Michael. My hand shook as I closed the phone, but I refused to let fear consume me. The next morning, I told Chris. He read the message, his jaw tightening. "He's not just lashing out anymore. He's planning something. We need to be ready." I nodded. "I'll alert Stein and the security team." "But Chris, if it comes to it, we can't protect him from himself." "Not anymore." Chris looked away, his face shadowed. "I know, but he's still my brother." Emily's breaking point came sooner than I expected. She showed up at the house one evening, her eyes red, her voice hoarse. "He gave me papers again," she said, holding out a folder with shaking hands. This time, It's worse. He wants me to sign over my trust rights to him. He says if I don't, he'll cut me off forever. He says I'm not a real sister if I won't stand with him. I opened the folder, scanning the documents. They were dangerous. If Emily signed, Michael would gain power he could use against me, against the company, against Chris. You can't sign this, I said firmly. Emily broke down, sobbing. But if I don't, I lose him. He'll hate me forever. I don't know if I'm strong enough to do that. I pulled her into my arms. Emily, listen to me. Loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. Sometimes, the hardest love is saying no. She clung to me, her tears soaking my shoulder. I'm so tired, Anna. I don't want to fight anymore. I just want peace. I stroked her hair gently. Then choose peace, Emily. Choose yourself. That night, she left the papers unsigned. It was the first time she had defied her brother, and I knew it had broken her heart. Days later, the storm broke again. Michael barged into a private board meeting uninvited, dragging Emily by the wrist. His suit was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, his voice shaking with fury. She betrayed me, he shouted, shoving Emily forward. She chose you over her own blood. Emily stumbled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Michael, please, shut up. He barked, his face red with rage. The board members gasped, whispers filling the room. I rose from my chair, keeping my voice calm but firm. Michael, this is not the place. Leave now. He laughed bitterly. Leave. Oh no. I'm taking back what's mine. You tricked Dad. You stole our inheritance, and you brainwashed my siblings. But no more. Today, I end this. He pulled a document from his jacket and slammed it on the table. I demand a vote to remove her. Right now, or I'll go public with every dirty secret I can find. The room froze. All eyes turned to me. Chris stood suddenly, his voice sharp. Enough, Michael. Michael spun on him. You too, you traitor. You've been siding with her since the beginning. You're nothing but her puppet. Chris didn't back down. No, I'm her partner. Because she's right. Because Dad was right. And you're the one destroying everything. For a moment, the two brothers locked eyes, the entire room holding its breath. Then Chris stepped closer, his voice low but powerful. You've wasted every chance Dad gave you. Every dollar, every favor, every ounce of trust. And now you're wasting the last chance he left. I won't let you drag us down anymore. Michael's hands shook, his face twisted in rage. You think you're better than me. Chris's voice was steady. No, but I'm better than who I used to be. And that's enough. The board members murmured in agreement. The chairman finally spoke. We've seen enough. Mrs. Bennett remains CEO. And if this behavior continues, Michael, we will take legal action to protect the company. Michael's face turned pale. He looked around the room. Realizing he was outnumbered and out of control, he grabbed the papers off the table, crumpled them in his fist, and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Emily collapsed into her chair. Sobbing quietly, I placed a hand on her shoulder. You were brave today, I whispered. She shook her head. I just feel broken. Chris stood beside me, his voice calm but strong. Then let me carry it for a while, that night. As I walked through Daniel's study, I paused by his photo on the desk. You were right, I whispered into the silence. Chris is changing. He's becoming the man you hoped for. But Michael, I don't know if there's any hope left for him. The house was quiet, but my heart was not, because I knew Michael's silence wouldn't last, and the next time he came, he might not walk away, The house felt heavier with every passing day. Even when Michael was gone, his shadow seemed to hang over everything. I could feel him circling, waiting, building up for one final strike. Daniel had warned me about this. He won't stop until he burns himself out. Be ready, Anna. His pride will push him past the edge. I had prepared for months, following every step Daniel had outlined. But no amount of preparation could quiet the knot of fear in my chest. It happened on a stormy night, the kind where the rain lashes against the windows and thunder rattles the walls. I was in the study, reviewing documents, when the front door slammed open. Michael. He was soaked from the rain, his hair plastered to his forehead, his eyes wild. In his hand, he clutched a bottle of whiskey, half empty. "You stole everything," he slurred, pointing at me with shaking fingers. "Dad, the company, my siblings. You stole it all. Michael, you need to leave," I said firmly, keeping my voice steady, though my heart was racing. "This isn't the way." Chris appeared from the hallway, his face tight with anger and fear. "Michael, stop. You don't know what you're doing." Michael laughed bitterly. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. Tonight, I take back what's mine. Tonight, you all see the truth." His words were broken, his voice shaking, but the threat in them was real. Emily rushed in then, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. "Michael, please," she cried. "This isn't you. Dad wouldn't want this." Michael turned on her, his voice like a whip. "Don't you dare talk about Dad. You betrayed me. You chose her over me. You're no sister of mine." Emily's knees nearly buckled, but she stood her ground, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't betray you, Michael. I tried to save you. But you don't want saving, you just want destruction. And I can't follow you anymore." Her words cut through the room like a blade. For the first time, Michael's rage faltered. His hand trembled, his face twisting with pain. "You'd really leave me?" he whispered, his voice breaking. Emily nodded through her tears. "If it means saving myself." "Yes." Michael's eyes darkened. He stepped forward, his movements shaky but filled with rage. "Then you're all against me. Every last one of you. Fine, if I can't have the company. If I can't have Dad's legacy, then no one will." He raised the whiskey bottle, as if to smash it against the desk. But before he could, Chris moved in a flash. Chris grabbed his brother's arm, wrenching the bottle away and throwing it to the ground, where it shattered into 100 pieces. "Enough!" Chris roared, his voice louder than the storm outside. "This ends tonight. Michael, no more threats. No more lies. No more destroying yourself and everyone around you. Dad gave you chance after chance, and you threw them all away. You don't get another one." Michael struggled, shouting, cursing, fighting to break free. But Chris held him, his grip strong, his resolve unshaken. Finally, Michael collapsed, his body shaking with sobs. He sank to the floor, his rage broken, replaced by something raw and hollow grief. "I just wanted him to love me," he choked out. "I just wanted him to be proud." Tears filled my eyes as I watched the broken man before me. For all his anger, all his cruelty, this was the truth buried beneath it. A son who never believed he was enough. Chris knelt beside him, his voice softer now. "He did love you, Michael. More than you ever knew. But he couldn't save you from yourself. Only you can do that." The police came soon after. Security had been called the moment Michael stormed in. They led him away, not in handcuffs, but in the quiet, sad way you lead someone who has lost everything. Emily wept quietly, her body trembling. Chris stood beside her, steady, his arm around her shoulders, and I stood in the study, staring at Daniel's photo on the desk. "It's done," I whispered to him. "The storm you warned me about, Dids, finally passed." In the weeks that followed, life slowly began to settle. Michael entered treatment, his legal troubles softened by the evidence of his decline. For the first time, he was forced to face himself without excuses. Whether he would truly change, none of us knew. Emily began therapy with Dr. Winters, finally finding a place to heal after years of being pulled in two directions. She grew stronger, steadier, learning to say no without drowning in guilt. And Chris became everything Daniel had hoped for. He continued working by my side, not just as Daniel's son, but as a leader in his own right. Employees respected him, investors trusted him, and slowly, he became the face of Bennett Properties. One afternoon, after a long board meeting, Chris and I stood in Daniel's office together. "You did it," I told him softly. "You became the man your father believed you could be." Chris looked at me, his eyes steady. "I couldn't have done it without you. Dad was right to trust you. You saved us, Ivan, when we hated you for it." I smiled faintly, tears pricking my eyes. "I didn't save you, Chris. I just carried out Daniel's plan. The rest you did yourself." The company flourished. The family, though scarred, began to rebuild in small ways. And through it all, Daniel's voice stayed with me, guiding me, reminding me why I had fought so hard. One evening, I placed the final lavender sprig from my garden in a small vase on Daniel's desk. His favorite scent, the one I never got to lay on his casket. I kept my promise, I whispered into the quiet room. "I protected what you built. I guided them as best I could, and now, I think they're ready." The air felt lighter somehow, as if Daniel himself was there, smiling, proud, for the first time since his passing. I felt peace that as I closed the study door behind me, I realized something important. This wasn't just Daniel's legacy anymore, it was mine too, and together, we had made sure it would last for generations.